Hey everybody! I was going to do a quick video on masking your textures. Masking sounds scary, but it's really not, and if you practice it, it gets a lot easier. So I have a photo of our dog Sparky here, and I'd like to put a texture on it. One of the things with putting a texture on a photograph is the texture is just there. And masking lets you lighten it in certain areas or even completely wipe it away. And I'll show you what I mean here. We're going to place our texture by going under File. I'm using Photoshop CS6, but you can do this in earlier versions and Elements. Go under File, Place, and just pick whatever texture you like. I'm going to use the 1000 years BC again. Click Place. Mine opens in Camera Raw. I didn't want to mess with it, so I'll click OK. Then you need to resize it to fit your photograph. And then just play around with whatever blending mode you think would look best. Blending modes are up here in the layers section. It's kind of fun looking. Hard light. I think I'm going to stick with multiply though for this particular photo, and I'm going to lighten the opacity so the texture isn't so strong over it. And then this is where you can kind of control your texture a little bit. On certain photos, like photos with people, you might not want this texture, all of this part here, on somebody's skin or eyes or teeth. And so by adding a layer mask, you can take the texture off of that part of the photo. And it's really easy to do. You just go down here to this little box. If you hold your mouse over it, it says Add Layer Mask. Click on it. And it has brought this white rectangle up beside your texture. Here's the important part. You always have to remember to have this white layer mask selected. And when it's selected, it'll show these little lines around it. That means the texture is selected. This means the layer mask is selected. I'll show you why that's important in a minute. Another thing, and you don't have to know why at this point, you just have to remember to do it, that your brush, here's your brush needs to be on black to remove a texture from a photo. And I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute too, but for now just remember that it needs to be black. Then with your paintbrush black and your layer mask selected, you can go in and start painting the texture off of your subject, which I'm doing here. So the texture is still on the rest of the photograph, just not on Sparky himself. Here's what happens if you try to paint on the photo and you have your actual texture selected, not the layer mask. Oops. It will just make big black lines because you have your black brush selected, and it just paints black onto the photo. So if you're not working on the mask, then this is what you'll get. So it's important to always have the mask selected and to have black if you want to remove your texture. However, if you use white, and here I'm setting my foreground color to white, selecting white enables you to fix any mistakes you might have made. And it can actually completely undo everything you just did. So if you paint white back onto this, it will put the texture back in. And just completely undo everything I did. So if you take off a little too much, say I'm doing say I'm wanting to paint this away. I paint that with black on the white layer mask. And say I accidentally get up here, and I really just want it on Sparky. I can switch back my brush to white and just run it over the part I want to go back to the original texture. And there you have it. I didn't have to undo or delete anything. I just changed my brush color and painted it back over. And by switching it back to black, still selected on my layer mask, I can finish getting the texture off of Sparky completely. Oops. And just, I can go back to my white one there, fill that back in, go back to black, and keep painting. I usually use a soft brush when I do this. I'm actually at 2% or 0% hardness. I'll show you if you use a very hard brush, you have to be very accurate because it makes it very defined. So if being accurate isn't your forte like me, it's helpful to use a softer brush. So that's without the texture. That's with the texture. This is without the layer mask. And this is with the layer mask. So it can just give you a little bit of a different look, and textures are really fun, but being able to mask away the parts you don't want gives you a little bit more control over your photo. So I hope that was helpful. Just remember, layer mask selected, black takes away the texture, and white adds the texture back in. So depending on which one of these you have as your foreground color, in this case black, your texture will be removed, and with white, it will be added back in. And it's just something, you'll make mistakes. It's very frustrating right at first because you'll accidentally have a white selected and you meant to have your black, but it's just something once you play with it, you definitely get a little more comfortable with it. So I hope that was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.